are taking this class as part of a conversion process. There is no beginning or end to the class. It sort of goes in perpetuity in a cycle. This is maybe the fourth or fifth class in this cycle, and when it finishes, we'll start again. So some people started at class 1. In some ways it's more convenient, but that's very rare. So come whenever you wish, stay for as long as it's interesting to you, and eventually, if you stay long enough, we'll go through the entire curriculum, okay? If this is part of a conversion process, you should be also scheduling regular meetings with me every 3 to 6 weeks, just to touch base and progress, etc., and figure out what type of path towards conversion is best for you. And in those meetings, we'll discuss what next steps might look for you in terms of actually applying everything that we learn into living a Jewish life. Okay, that's the spiel about it. But the class, obviously, or not obviously, everyone's welcome to come to the class no matter what, and for whatever background, whatever your interest is. We meet a few times a month, and happy to have you here. Okay? Questions about that kind of general housekeeping material? Okay. I'm going to ask, maybe you just introduce yourselves, because I think not everyone knows each other, and maybe just say something quick about yourself. Say your name, please, and maybe where you live, and say where you were at 10 o'clock this morning. You can divulge that. Okay. Do you want to start?
My name is Salin Churi. I live in West Loop, but just bought a condo here, so I'll be moving back to Oakdale in a couple of weeks. And 10 o'clock this morning, I was in Hyde Park at the office.
Cool.
My name is Lauren. I live in West Loop currently. At 10 this morning, I was at work at the Merchandise Mart.
I'm Jacqueline. I live in River North currently, and at 10 a.m. I was also in River North working.
Okay, I'm Lior. We both live in River North. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I was at the Starbucks.
Delicious.
On Chicago, next to my home.
My name is Michelle. I currently live in South Loop, and at 10 o'clock this morning I was on UIC's campus studying.
I'm Kristen. I live in Lincoln Park, and at 10 o'clock this morning I was at work. I'm an accountant.
I'm Daniel Sussin, and live in Long Grove in the suburbs, but we're planning on moving here to Lakeview. And 10 o'clock I was at I think I was at home.
Good.
My name's Anelia. We're from Long Grove, and at 10 o'clock this morning I was at work in Buffalo Grove.
My name is David. I live in Lakeview, a few blocks from the shore. Some of you have been to my apartment for this class, which also meets there. And at 10 o'clock this morning I was at my office right over there, doing stuff. I have a syllabus, I guess, for some of the new students. So this you should have, right?
Yeah, wait.
You have, okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. So we are now, let's see, in our last class, I think we actually were in Roman numeral 2, letter B. We talked about 1, 2, 3. We went through all the melachot, all the 39 categories of forbidden labor and Shabbat, and we sort of got up to 5, which is that's a tricky one. Okay, so this is gonna take my jacket off. Okay, this preparing and serving warm food on Shabbat. So I guess again, just to remind those of you who this is like you're just here for the first time, you're sort of jumping right into the middle of a very technical discussion. I encourage you, if you want to, maybe watch some of the videos, your video recordings of all the prior classes. That may help you get some context. But also, it's okay to be a little bit lost and just try to, things will make more sense. The alternative would be to insist that everyone starts the class at the same time and we just go through from beginning to end. But that, I feel, doesn't work because people drop in and drop out, and so the downside is you might get a little bit lost, but hopefully not too lost. So I'll try to say things that are comprehensible. just again, in terms of laws of Shabbat, some books, this is like a children's book about the laws of Shabbat, but it's actually incredibly helpful, and it does a very good job of going through the various, like it has like sort of pictures of old-fashioned looking people doing the forbidden form of labor in ancient times, and then modern applications of that same category of labor. So it's actually a really nice overview of the laws of Shabbat. I actually recommend. I recommend this book. What?
What's the name of the book?
The 39 Avot Melacha of Shabbat. There's a Hebrew version also. There's the English version. Again, especially some of the ones that we were discussing, if you recall, like the ones that have to do with the various threading loom, threading a harness for a loom, and weaving, all those weaving things. Like if you don't, this helps. It has illustrations of all of those, right? So that's just helpful. Okay, so I recommend that. But the other book that's listed on the syllabus is this 2-volume Laws of Shabbat, which is, I think, a very good book. I've mentioned before, a big problem with English language books on Jewish laws, the people who write them feel that they have to be very strict because they're publishing in English and nobody deserves lenient opinions if they can only read English, apparently. Sometimes they'll put lenient opinions, alternative views in Hebrew footnotes, but have very strict directions in English, which I really don't understand what that's about. This is a very nice alternative. He's a very reliable and serious scholar, but he says reasonable things in English as well. So I would, it's like a great, as a reference, as a good like grounding laws of Shabbat, this is what I would recommend. And for the topic that we're talking today, this is also another good book. This is just focused just on laws of cooking and heating food. This is, it has a lot of, another good resource. Okay, so cooking is one of the prohibited forms of labor, one of the 39 categories of labor that we don't engage, that we refrain from on Shabbat is cooking. Cooking here is defined as using heat to chemically transform food. Okay, that's like a basic definition, but we have to define our terms so we know what we're talking about. Okay, using heat to chemically transform food and to make it better. Right? That's cooking. Okay, it sounds kind of basic, but we need to define, because what about, there are all sorts of, well, it's important because one of the additional rules that we have for cooking is that cooking in Jewish law only happens once. That means once something is cooked, you can't cook it again. So it's like a one-time enhancement of food by the application of heat. That's called cooking, and that's what we don't do on Shabbat. That's fairly simple, but it means that reheating already cooked food is not a violation of cooking, because you can't cook something twice. So far so good? We're sort of building step by step, okay? Except, water doesn't quite fit in that paradigm, because water, when you get it very hot, it's not chemically transformed. Boiling water isn't a chemical transformation, it's a physical transformation, not a chemical transformation. Water stays the same when you heat it, when you boil it, but we do say that heating water does count as cooking. And so this leniency that you can't cook something twice only applies for solids, does not apply for liquids. Liquids can be cooked multiple times. If water gets heated to a piping hot temperature and then it cools down, and it gets reheated to a piping hot temperature, you violated Shabbat twice. Dry foods, however, can only be cooked once, and so heating a dry food till it gets hot, like once it's already been cooked, and were you to heat it again, that would not be a violation of the biblical prohibition against cooking. So far, so good? How do we say, so we have to define what does it mean that it's cooked, right? What if something, let's say you have something where it's cooked sufficient to eat, but if you cook it more, it'll get tastier. So does that count as a violation of cooking? What if you could cook it more, but it'll get worse? So if you cook it more, it's going to get worse. It'll dry out and get yucky. That's pretty obvious that you wouldn't, violate cooking if you were to cook it again, because the additional cooking is just drying it out and making it burnt or yucky. But if there's additional, like it's good, you can serve it now, you can eat it now, but if you cook it more, it gets even better, maybe that would be a problem with cooking. Okay, so those also have to be defined. What if it's, maybe it's Yeah, okay. So those are other sort of things that Jewish law has to delineate and map out. For most of our practical purposes, none of this really matters. We just don't cook, okay? Right? So this doesn't necessarily come up in most cases. Now we discussed that in addition to biblical restrictions, these biblical definitions of the 39 categories of lay, it's a lot, so I feel the views of those of you who are just coming in, it's like a lot of like just the stuff all being a lot of details at once. Just slow me down if I'm assuming too much or going too fast. And those of you who've been here for a few weeks, hopefully this is not too much for you, but also if it's too much, if I'm going too fast. We mentioned that the biblical restriction, okay. The biblical restrictions on Shabbat, they're also rabbinic extensions of those biblical restrictions. Right? It's all rabbinic in that the rabbis are the ones who read the Torah and discovered or received a tradition that there are 39 categories of labor that we don't do on Shabbat, and they also, in addition, and they defined those 39 categories, as I just mentioned, cooking is one of them, and they gave the definitions for cooking. That's not explicit in the Torah, we know that because the rabbis taught us that, but they taught us that in their capacity as the authoritative interpreters of what the Torah means. In addition, they legislated. And they legislated extensions of the biblical rules to protect them. So especially when it comes to cooking, there were substantial extensions that were made to protect cooking, and to prevent us from violating laws of cooking. What were they concerned? They were concerned that if you, let's say you put food on the stove before Shabbat, so you didn't do anything on Shabbat itself. You did everything before Shabbat, and it's going to cook on its own once Shabbat starts. Is that a violation of cooking on Shabbat?
No.
No, because you did the action before Shabbat. Okay? Your stove is working on Shabbat, but your stove does not have to keep Shabbat. Your pot is working on Shabbat, but your pot does not have to observe Shabbat. What you did was put something on the fire before Shabbat. You've done nothing wrong. But they were worried, again, especially if you imagine an ancient stove, which was a wood-burning stove with coal or wood, that if you were hungry and you were really worried about getting your dinner cooked on time, you might stoke the fire. And stoking the fire to cause it to burn up again, that's a biblical violation of causing to burn, one of the 39 categories. And so they said, and they were concerned about that you might stoke the fire. So they created a rule, it's called shihiyah, which says you're not allowed to leave something cooking on the heat when Shabbat begins, even if it's all set up before Shabbat, unless you take some precautions. So the basic restriction, you can't leave your pot on the stove unless there are these precautions. And one precaution is, it's already basically edible when Shabbat starts. If it's basically edible, your stew, your roast, whatever it is, it's basically edible when Shabbat begins, so you're not going to be tempted to stoke a fire. So they're not worried about it. Second condition is that the opposite. You throw in a chunk of raw meat in your stew pot right before Shabbat begins. It's totally raw, totally inedible, and there's no way, even if you were to stoke, it wouldn't make a difference. This stew is not going to be done until tomorrow afternoon. So, like Saturday afternoon. So Friday night, you're not going to stoke it, it's fine. That's another workaround. Third workaround is if you take the stove and you cover or scrape away the coals and the embers from beneath the pot. Imagine an old wood stove, and you rake away the embers so that it'll still cook with ambient heat, but there's nothing to stoke. And if those conditions are met, it's permissible to have to leave something on the stove when Shabbat begins. So what does that look like in our modern condition? So food that's already cooked, we know what that looks like. Food that is totally raw and it's not going to be ready until the next day, we know what that looks like. And what does it mean to cover, or push away the embers so you can't stoke? What does that mean in the modern condition? There are a number of different interpretations. One interpretation is you find a way to cover the knobs of your stove. Another interpretation is you take a piece of metal, cover the fire, cover the burners, and your pot's on that piece of metal. In Yiddish, it's called a blech. Another interpretation is both. It's a blech that curves. So you have a flat piece of metal over your burners that comes down and covers the knobs of your stove. in that way, you can't stoke the fire, meaning you can't turn up the burners or turn the oven hot to a higher heat in order to make it cook faster. So these are ways to avoid the rabbinic prohibition of shihiyah, the rabbinic prohibition of leaving something on the heat as Shabbat begins, even though you're not doing any cooking and actually involved in it. Okay? So that's with the biblical law of cooking, and we have this one important piece of rabbinic legislation. So far, so good? All right?
Yep.
Okay. There's another rabbinic prohibition for Shabbat, and this is called chazara. This is called, or the laws regarding returning something to the heat once it's been removed. If something is on the stove, on the heat, and you remove it, you're allowed to return it to the heat, but you can't, so only so long as, maybe some say you have to keep it in your hand while you're serving. Some say you sort of have to just have intention to immediately return it to the heat. So you put it down and you're serving, but your intention is I'm going to put it right back on the heat, I'm going to put it right back on the heat. But what you can't do is put something on the heat that's like totally cold, like initially, for the first time on Shabbat, even if it's already cooked. So it's cooked, it's dry, it's fully cooked, there's no prohibition of cooking because it's already been cooked. There's no prohibition of shihiyah, like maybe you're going to stoke the coals because it's already fully cooked. But it was in your refrigerator, and you take it out of the refrigerator and you put it in the oven, or you put it on the stove, or even if you put it on a blech, that you can't do on Shabbat day, because the rabbis were concerned it looks as though you're cooking. That, like putting something cold on a burner, on a heating element, that looks like cooking, and so we don't do that on Shabbat either. You can return something to a heating element if, again, so Friday night dinner, you take something off the blech and you serve some pieces of chicken to your guests and your family, and then you put it back on the blech. You can do that. But you can't, let's say Shabbat lunch, take something out of the fridge and put it on the blech, put it on the stove to warm up to serve for lunch 45 minutes later. Because taking something cold and putting it on the heat looks like cooking. There is a workaround for this rule as well, a very easy one, and that is to put something, according to many opinions, and in this community what we do, you can put something on an electric warming tray. An electric warming tray is a device used solely for heating. It's never used for cooking, because it doesn't get quite hot enough for cooking, and that's just not what it's designed to do. It's a plain metal rectangle usually. It gets fairly warm. If you put a casserole or a pot on it, it will heat it, but it doesn't have knobs that can be adjusted, or if they do, they're uncovered or removed. And it is not designed for cooking, it's never used for cooking, and so, according to many opinions, to put something cold on a warming tray is permissible on Shabbat day even. You can take something out of your fridge, Shabbat, an hour before lunch, put it on your warming tray and serve warm food on Shabbat lunch in that way. Another common thing is to serve like cholents or some sort of stew that's made in a slow cooker or a crock pot. Ingredients are thrown in before Shabbat, it's plugged in, so you're not doing any cooking on Shabbat itself, you're not touching it until you are ready to serve. In terms of the prohibitions against shihiyah, those are overcome either because it's already basically edible when Shabbat begins, or it's completely raw when Shabbat begins because there's big raw chunks of meat in it, so there's no risk of stoking. And also, you can say it's that category of that workaround of covering the embers, scraping the embers away, we, in practice, fulfill that requirement by maybe taping over or covering the knob. To remind us, I'm not going to, even if I'm a little anxious that it's going to be not cooking time, I'm not going to switch it to high because I've taped over or put aluminum foil over the knob so I can't adjust it on Shabbat itself. And that's a very common way to have nice warm food on Shabbat itself.
What about your oven? Can you keep your oven on?
You can keep the oven on, and let's talk through. Let's sort of work through this. You can keep the oven on. You can have things in the oven when Shabbat begins, and then you just have to worry about shihiyah. Okay, something that is left in a hot place when Shabbat begins. So either it's mostly cooked when Shabbat begins, so you're not going to be tempted to adjust the oven temperature, or it's fully raw when Shabbat begins and you're cooking it, like you're leaving it in for the next day. No matter how much you stoke, it won't be ready in time for dinner, so you're leaving it in for the next day. Or it's going to be served for dinner, but you cover the knobs of your oven so you can't adjust it. And then you take it out, and you can't turn the oven off usually on Shabbat, so you have to sort of judge how comfortable you feel with having the oven on for the rest of the day. But otherwise that'll be fine. To take something cold on Shabbat day, like lunchtime, and put it in the oven, that would be forbidden because of this chazara issue of, you can only put things back in the heat. You can't put things in the heat for the first time on Shabbat, even if they're fully cooked and dry. But, so that couldn't be used for Shabbat day, but for Shabbat dinner you can use it. Often what we'll do actually is we'll just turn the oven off right when Shabbat begins. And even though dinner is like an hour or two later, it'll still be warmer in the oven, and we don't have to worry about finding space for it on our warming tray. We'll just leave it in the oven, turn off the oven when Shabbat begins, and just take it out and serve it an hour later, 2 hours later, and it's still pretty much warm. Like it retains heat in that way.
What do you do on Shabbat? Let's say you make chul. There's other options you can do, but what do you personally do in your house?
Personally, often we make
It makes it easiest.
Yeah, so chulent is like great, and it's yummy and easy, and you can throw whatever ingredients you like into a crock pot and then plug it in, and and then next day you have a great lunch. And my kids like leftovers now, so it's great for the week. And I can give you a recipe if you want. But there are many, many different recipes, and it's actually kind of fun to experiment, with different, meat, about 1 to 2 pounds of meat, 1 cup of barley, a cup of beans, an onion or two, some garlic, maybe some barbecue sauce, chili sauce, depending on what you want. Some people make it with half a bottle of beer. Some people do it with wine instead. The wine kind of marinates the meat in a nice way. Some people put parsnips, turnips, carrots.
I grew up with
squash.
chul. So
What?
I grew up with chul.
Yeah.
So-
So
Yeah, it's
but it's you can make it with chicken,
yeah.
which is also good. You can make it vegetarian. It's many different ways, and it's a great way to have something really hot and delicious on Shabbat day. We also have an electric warming tray, so we'll put fish or chicken or rice or potatoes on the warming tray, and you have to time it. You know that it could take 30 minutes, 45 minutes before it gets warm. So often, right when tefillot, when services end, prayers end Shabbat morning, my wife will run home on the early side and put things on the warming tray, and then I take a little bit longer to leave by the time I'm home, and we sit down, and we sit at the table, and everyone's sitting at the table, the food is warmed in the warming tray. And you learn, if you get a warming tray, how long it takes for which foods to get warm. We put our warming tray in a timer, so that way, like an appliance timer, like for air conditioners, like a heavy-duty timer, so that it's not on all night long and all morning long, so that if I accidentally put my hand down, I won't burn myself, but it's on for a couple hours at lunchtime, and that's what we use. I find that very, very easy.
Okay. So you use a timer and you use a hot tray, chul, and that's how you kind of work.
Yeah, that's our go-to Shabbat day. Friday night often we'll just leave stuff in the oven as it's done cooking and just take it out of the oven. Yes, Kristen.
When there's a mixture that's like solid and sort of liquidy, like cholent is, or at least like the way I've made it, it has a sauce with it. So does that count as liquid?
Okay, so first of all, so let's just remind ourselves. We said this leniency of, in Hebrew, ein bishul achar bishul, that you can't cook something once it's already been cooked. That only applies to solids. So if something is a liquid, like pea soup, you can't, even if it's already fully cooked, you can't actually heat it on Shabbat, even on a warming tray, because to take a cold liquid and turn it into a hot liquid, that's actually a violation of the biblical prohibition of cooking. That's a serious thing. Although, it's only according to this other opinion, so it's not actually explicit. It's not an explicit distinction in the Talmud. That's a discovery in the medieval period, which is important, but just, in terms of whatever, just worth knowing. So only dry foods can be heated on Shabbat. Cholent, it doesn't matter because you're not heating it on Shabbat. You're throwing it all in the crock pot before Shabbat, and it can be as liquid as you want. You can make totally liquid soup in that way. It's in that method, right? Because you're doing all the action on Friday, and it's just cooking on its own into Shabbat, and you're just serving it. So there'll be no problem. You couldn't stir it while it's in the heating element because the stirring is facilitating cooking. So you have to take it out of the heating element, and then you ladle it out. Okay? But it can be fully liquid if you're making it that way. But in terms of taking something out of the refrigerator to heat on a warming tray, it has to be solid and not liquid. So there you have to decide what's a solid, what's a liquid. And I would say if it has a shape, it's a solid. So even something that is like, even mashed potatoes, I would say, are solid, even though they will eventually conform to the shape of the thing they're in. They're still sufficiently, you could sculpt them, right? So that counts as a solid. If you have a roast chicken, let's say, and it has a little bit of gravy sauce in the bottom, that's also okay, because clearly the roast chicken is what you meant to heat. You're meaning to heat, and a little of liquid at the bottom is not going to be a problem. If you have congealed liquid, that's also okay, because at the moment when you're heating it, it's a solid. And of course, if heating it will become a liquid. So maybe when you take something off a warming tray, 45 minutes later, you see gravy in the bottom, you don't have to be concerned because it was a solid when you took it out of the fridge. Things that you would have a problem heating would be soup, or maybe meatballs and sauce, where the sauce is really liquidy. That might be a problem with heating, although there are some who are lenient even about that, and see different practices amongst different people. I don't know. I don't think we serve meatballs with sauce on Shabbat day in our home. We wouldn't heat them, right? Because that would say it's too liquidy. I know there are some very serious people who are lenient about that, but I just that's sharing that. Any other question? That's a lot of information. We just sort of and this. I mean, and in yeshiva, this was like 3 months of study to work through what I just told you in 25 minutes. So it's a lot, but that's why reference books are helpful, and review, and doing it in your own kitchen will make it more. But you're supposed to have warm food on Shabbat. The point is not to have a day of eating cold food. The point is, Shabbat is supposed to be a really pleasant experience. That's like rabbinic Judaism. Our ancestors differed from all the other versions of Judaism in the ancient world in a number of ways. Among them, we felt that Shabbat was supposed to be a pleasurable, enjoyable day. There were like many different, in the time of the Second Temple, the early rabbinic period, the time of Jesus and the rise of the early Christians, there were many, many, many different sects of Judaism, of which, like the Jesus followers were one, and Rabbinic Judaism was another. Rabbinic Judaism distinguished itself in its insistence that Shabbat should be a pleasant day, that we should have, we should have warm food, have light in our home, that marital sex is encouraged on Shabbat, in contrast to the way that Shabbat was observed amongst other Jewish groups in that time period. And so, even though there are hoops to jump through in order to avoid these restrictions, we're supposed to have warm food, supposed to have good food, just be a pleasant, enjoyable day. And we talked about that a little bit before, but I just want to, in the context of the warm food, don't think that this is too hard, I can't. No, it's hard, but you're supposed to do it. Before you leave, you should take, I can give you copies, we have on the shelf on the table, the guidelines that I wrote for the shul to kind of help, how to serve and prepare hot food on Shabbat. These are our community standards. The idea was that we should just sort of educate and promulgate guidelines for these types of rules and other similar restrictions so that everyone should feel comfortable hosting others and being hosted by others. So the guidelines are there, so you can take a look and see if I do a good job of explaining all this in a somewhat clear way. Let's talk about tea, making tea and coffee on Shabbat, and for that, maybe we'll relocate into the little kitchenette area, and I will bring the video camera too, and let's relocate there. Does that sound okay? This is an instant hot little thing on this. Can this be used on Shabbat?
Yes,
No.
Why yes, why no?
because it's already hot.
Okay.
No, I'll say no. I tell you why I
it's
think
not
so.
already.
Because it's constantly need to preheat, so it's always heating itself.
So I think you're right, and even if it were already hot, you're let's say the hot water here is from the tank already hot, by taking hot water from the tank, new cold water is going into the tank and is itself being heated. So that water is being cooked. Even if you're taking from your tank. If you have something like this you could take from on Shabbat because there's no cold water going in.
Oh.
Okay? But the tap, your hot water from your tap is causing cold water to go into your boiler and get heated, and the instant hot as well, it's cold water that's being heated. Okay? So you couldn't use this on Shabbat because the water itself is being cooked. But let's say it's something like this, where the water is already has already been heated. So you can definitely take your hot water. It's piping hot water, but it's already been cooked. It was cooked before Shabbat, and you did nothing to it. That's fine. So what about making tea? So putting the tea bag into the hot water raises the concern of the tea bags, the tea leaves themselves being cooked by being submerged in boiling water. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Normally you make tea, you put the tea bag in a cup, and then you pour the hot water over the tea leaves, and that's boiling, piping hot water being poured over tea leaves raises the concern that the tea leaves themselves are going to be cooked. The water's not cooked because your water's already cooked already, but the tea leaves might be cooked. So how do we avoid that concern? There's an understanding in Jewish law that only primary water, or only a primary vessel, in Hebrew a kli rishon, has the power to cook. But a secondary vessel, a kli sheni, loses the power to cook because the kli rishon, so you have a pot on the stove, it's boiling, you put something into that pot, it'll cook. You take that hot water, you pour it into another pot, nothing will cook in that second pot because all the energy, all that heat of that water has to first warm up the cold pot that it was poured into, and it won't have as much energy left over to cook the potatoes or whatever it might be that you put into that second pot. That's the theory. If you'd like to test this, be my guest, okay? But that's the theory. The Talmud makes that assumption, and the theory is explained by the medieval commentaries that a secondary vessel, all the heat has to heat up the vessel itself, heat up that pot, and so it won't be able to heat the food that you put into that pot. So that, based on that, I could take hot water, put it into this cup. This is now a secondary vessel because it wasn't heated in this cup. I could then put the tea into this cup, and everything will be great.
It's a vessel.
Secondary vessel. Here's the problem. We're almost there. Some are concerned that maybe tea is one of this rare category that the Talmud mentions of things that cook very easily. And so maybe, even though most things can't cook in a secondary vessel, maybe tea will cook in a secondary vessel. So now we're in trouble. So what some people do is they make like a tea concentrate before Shabbat. They'll put 5 or 10 tea bags in a little teapot and make very, very, very concentrated tea, which then dilute in hot water on Shabbat day. And that works, and that's fine. Another alternative that's been suggested by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, another very important American 20th century rabbi, is take your hot water, put it into a third vessel. Because even though the Talmud discusses a category of things that can be cooked in a secondary vessel, nothing can be cooked in a tertiary vessel. And so this is what is very common in our community. Hot water goes into a cup or into a teapot, and from there it goes into a third cup, and only in that third cup do you make your tea. Okay? And it works more or less just as well as any other way you might make tea, but this way we're doing it in a very different way than when we make tea during the week. We're showing we're not cooking the leaves, we're not cooking the water, and you can make tea this way in Shabbat. Does anybody like some tea? For real, you can have it.
I'm good.
Okay. I'll take it.
That's a good question.
How about coffee? Like, how does it work with coffee? Like instant coffee or other things?
So
like
instant coffee you would do in the same way in a tertiary. You would put the hot water into the tertiary vessel and then put the instant coffee in and stir it up. You could also, what we do in our home, we make, you could also use cold pressed coffee and dilute it in hot water. And we have that set up downstairs here actually for Shabbat day. And you could also put your coffee maker on a timer, which is what we do in our home actually. So we have fresh brewed hot coffee because it's all set up before Shabbat, and it's just on a timer, and Shabbat morning, 7 o'clock, timer clicks on and makes a pot of fresh coffee.
So it's different, okay. Because it's automatic, it's not a violation of Shabbat?
Exactly.
And that's even, sorry.
Mhm.
And that's true even if more water would come into a boiler, right? There's a digital solution.
No, because it's it's a coffee maker, meaning it's a why
I'm saying if you could program your shower to come on at noon, right? Even though you have the boiler problem, it's all been done prior to the onset of Shabbat. So
Oh, I see. Yes, if you were to put a timer to turn your shower on, that would work. Or let's say more apt would be
But
your
it's still
dishwasher.
heating up the
Well,
water.
wouldn't that be the same thing as this?
No.
It heats up cold water
No, because
eventually?
this heats up the cold water in response to my action that I do on Shabbat, as opposed to a timer. Let's say shower. There are other issues implicated in using the shower, so that's not a great example. A better example would be a dishwasher, which is heating water, cooking water, doing all sorts of things. But if it's on a timer, that would be okay. Now, there's some controversy with timers. Moshe Feinstein, who I just mentioned, he was against timers for almost anything. He felt that, once you have timers, you could have everything could be in a timer, and Shabbat would be no different than any other day of the week. And he felt, use a timer for lights, for lamps, because everyone does that anyway, and it's too late to stop it. But he said, no more timers. He didn't say it's forbidden. He said, asur lahatir. He said it's prohibited to permit this, which is a very strange, kind of phrasing. He was really anxious about timers in general. He thought the entire nature of the day would be ruined. I think it's a real fear. It seems that we're okay using timers as long as we're careful about what we use them for and not to let it get out of hand. So I know people who use timers for dishwashers. I use a timer for my coffee maker. I think using a timer for a television would be a real violation of the sanctity of the day, and would kind of ruin the experience of Shabbat. So I think it has to be, done with great trepidation and with caution. But in theory, basic halakha, a timer could permit anything in theory, because all the action is done before Shabbat, and
Or if you leave something on, for example, I know the TV example is not the right example, but if you leave it on before the Shabbat, then it's on for 24 hours.
Sure, light could be on. I mean, you should leave a light on, when Shabbat, in your
Right.
bathroom for all of Shabbat, for sure.
No, but like a TV or something.
So a TV, I'd say no, because
Okay.
it's the TV itself. I mean, it's not. You're right. We'll talk about we'll get there, but there's no technical violation of one of the prohibited forms of labor because you haven't done anything.
By the idea of have it on,
And
it's like
watching
interrupt. Yeah, it's
watching
interrupting.
television itself, even not the turning on, it's the
Uh-huh.
watching it.
Watching it, it's like, okay.
It's a day without TV,
Right.
and I mean, going over to let's say, a neighbor who was, you can't, you're walking down the streets and there's a TV on in the bar, and whatever, your neighbor invites you into his house to watch it. I think it's the television itself, not the
Got it.
turning on, which is the problem, and that's an old problem. Already the Talmud discusses, and the Talmudic rabbis were aware of the fact that between the biblical period and the Talmudic period, it's so weird speaking to you all standing around, but between the biblical, especially when I'm drinking tea in here now, between the biblical period and the rabbinic period, the Jews, for the most part, left farms and moved to cities. And so in the biblical period, most Jews are farmers. In the rabbinic period, most Jews live in cities. And with that shift, the nature of Shabbat changed pretty dramatically, because of the 39 categories of labor, most of them are things that we never do anyway, even during the week. They're mostly agricultural labor. When was the last time you plowed? When was the last time you planted? When was the last time you threshed? Have you ever threshed in your life? Have you ever winnowed? You know what winnowing is, right? So our weekday and Shabbat are almost identical now, because most of what we can't do on Shabbat, we never do anyway, even during the week. And so the Talmudic rabbis added new restrictions to Shabbat. They added a category called muktzah, which we'll study in the next class, and they added restrictions against commerce to make Shabbat more distinctive for those of us who don't work on farms. And I would say in the last 50 years, the prohibitions surrounding the use of electronics and media have a similar function, insofar as not using my phone, not using your computer, not radio, television, is so core to making the day different and special and unique, even in instances where you can't identify a specific technical violation of one of the 39 categories of work entailed in watching a neighbor's television or a radio left on all day. But that's what makes the day different, and Shabbat at its core has to be a special, sacred, unique, different day. And I think for many people, modern people, it sounds outrageous and unreasonable to have a day without television, phones, email, internet, but I think it's so necessary to have a day unplugged and a day where you're connected to the people around you in your community and in your family, rather than being connected in a very superficial way to Facebook and Twitter, whatever. So that's my little speech about that. Any other questions or anything we covered today? There's a lot of material. Over time, you'll read and you'll sort of review, and as those of you who are on a path towards conversion, you'll practice doing and experiencing this for real, and it'll be new questions will definitely come up, but you'll figure it out. But so far, things are mostly clear. What I said?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think maybe this is a good pausing space. I think. So we'll pause now. Thank you so much. And the next class will be announced. So
I didn't see it on the calendar.
There might not be another one on the calendar. Let's see if we can figure one out now. There's a lot of stuff coming up. Next Monday, the 13th. Or is that next Monday? It's next Monday. Next Monday is the 6th, right?
Yes.
That's all it counts.
What?
That's all it counts.
Yeah, and there's an executive committee meeting at the shul Tuesday the 7th. Tuesday the 7th, we could do the class if it were at our home at 8:30. So that'll probably be the next class. Tuesday, March 7th at 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, it's next Tuesday.
Let's walk.
8:30.
Yeah, maybe when we've done it at my house, have we been a little bit later?
It's always been 8:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So March 7th.
Is it your house, this one?
That'll be at my house. Yeah.
Yeah.
745 West Buckingham.
Yeah.
7:40. Oh, it is.
Tuesday, March 7th. Okay.
Privacy reasons.
So hope to see some of you there. Need to make sure I have the right time. No, it's not all day. It's okay. Great. There it is. Okay. So I hope to see many of you there. The classes are all recorded. If you can't make it, obviously you're welcome to look at the video, and you please call, schedule a meeting. We can talk, if you conversion path, and for any other reason, you're welcome to call or email or schedule a meeting. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we good for the 29th?
I will write back.